Today, I want to talk about the 2025 Academy Awards. They happened last night, and I want to break down the winners of the night. I want to talk about how Conan did as a host. I want to talk about how things can still improve for the show, I think. And most importantly, I want to talk about why 20% of the voters should be thrown out of the building. But if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We talk about every kind of movie here. We talk about the movies that get nominated for Oscars. We talk about the indie movies that don't get nominated for Oscars. I'm going to be breaking down my top 25 movies of last year, 2024, in the next week or so. That video should be coming out along with the movies I got to catch at Sundance this year. Marvel and DC have made a lot of announcements recently, and I want to talk about the future of those two franchises because it's pretty interesting to talk about how I think those will play out over the next 4 or 5 years. So if you don't want to miss any of that, be sure to subscribe. I really do appreciate it. I'm trying to build an awesome community around here, and let me know what you think of this kind of talking to the camera video. This is the kind of stuff I really want to do, but if you hate it, let me know. Anora winning Best Picture is crazy, and I think I want to start with talking about the absolute dominance of a performance by Sean Baker at the Oscars last night, because I don't think people are emphasizing enough how crazy this is that he won 4 Oscars in one night. There has only ever been one other person in the history of Hollywood that won 4 Academy Awards in one night. And the other person that won 4 Academy Awards, he's been dead for a while, so you might not have heard the name, but it was this little indie producer named Walt Disney. So yeah, the fact that Sean Baker took home 4 in one night and tied this record, which frankly, I never thought if I would see the day that somebody wins 4 in one night or 5. It's insane. And I think it is a good representation of where Hollywood is right now and where the Academy is kind of catching up to this way of filmmaking that it's really going into a new era of independence. Because when you work on an independent film like Sean Baker and his wife do, you are doing all of the work. There are some directors that write their own screenplays. Like there are a lot of directors that do more than just direct, but not all of them are editing their own stuff anymore. Christopher Nolan, yeah, he's got some takes on the Interstellar edit, but he's not editing the movie. And I think Sean Baker is the perfect guy to introduce this new wave of independent filmmaking. It's gonna feel, I really do believe, like the 70s and the 90s. And even though not all of those movies were necessarily recognized by the Academy, Sean Baker is the first public filmmaker I can recall joining Letterboxd and talking about movies and recommending other movies. He's one of the very few independent artists that makes films that a lot of people in Hollywood would never make. Like when you look at stuff like Tangerine, The Florida Project, Red Rocket, like Anora definitely feels his most mainstream of those, but Anora is still, like, there's not many movies talking about sex workers in that way in 2024, 2025 right now. There's a lot of people that would try and make The Florida Project and it wouldn't feel like an authentic experience. You know, like he just has this way of making movies that feel documentary-esque, like they just feel so lived in. And to see somebody like that getting into the Academy Awards, not only winning Best Picture, not only winning Best Director, but to tie the Walt Disney record in one night is insane. I'm just very thankful that I live in the same timeline that he's making movies, and where he goes from here, I think will be very interesting. He strikes me as the type of person that will probably work within the same kind of budget that he's used to and tell those kinds of stories. But I don't know if Sean Baker does have some sort of aspiration to go a little bit bigger. I'd be very curious to see what kind of direction he goes in, but I'm still trying to process it because forever, like there's just certain filmmakers that cinephiles, people that are obsessed with movies, they always talk about. And Sean Baker felt like one of those guys where like he would consistently make great movies until he dies, but he might be one of those people that never wins an Oscar. And then he just decides to win 4 of them in one night. On his 3rd speech, he was like, you know what? I'll shout out the movie theaters. I'll talk about how important it is to go see a movie in theaters. I thought that was pretty cool. The guy's been a real champion in terms of getting people to go to the theater and buy physical media and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. And I can't emphasize, I really am happy for the guy, but I think if I were to go through the logic of what do I prefer in an Academy Awards night, do I prefer somebody taking everything or it being split up a little bit? I'm somebody, I like to see the awards get split up a little bit, not for the sake of splitting them up, but I really do believe, you know, we were living in a world where Dune Part 2 and The Brutalist are probably the best choices in terms of a Best Picture winner this year for me. And if you're somebody that has seen and subscribed, I guess, from my initial review of The Brutalist, I pretty much said it was overhyped and I liked it, but I did not not understand where everybody was coming from. And that's true. I did have that opinion. And then I watched it 2 more times and fell in love with it. I mean, Dune Part 2 was never going to win. It was in a tough spot. I mean, when you come out literally a year ago from like a couple days ago, it's impossible to win Best Picture pretty much. I guess Everything Everywhere All at Once did do that. So I don't know what happened. Dune Part 2, every time they would play the Dune Part 2 music, I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe this is only getting 2 Oscars tonight. But all that being said, I don't think Anora is a bad Best Picture winner. I just don't think it's the right Best Picture winner. I've had this take that a lot of people do not agree with, and that is that the Academy this century so far has probably gotten Best Picture right about 7 or 8 times. And I thought last year was one of the times they actually got it right. Like Oppenheimer just feels like a movie that's going to be relevant in film history for another 50 years at least, especially when you compare it to movies like The Shape of Water, Spotlight, The King's Speech, The Artist, Green Book, Coda, Nomadland. And I think Anora is in an interesting spot because I think it is vastly better than all the movies I just mentioned besides Oppenheimer. And if I were ranking every Best Picture nominee from this previous year, I do think I would put Anora at 3. I would put Dune Part 2 and The Brutalist above it, but it's not like Anora is the 6th best movie from that lineup. To me, the Anora win is equivalent to Birdman winning, right? Birdman to me is a 5 out of 5. I love Birdman. It won Best Picture. It's universally recognized as a pretty phenomenal movie. And in my personal Best Picture tier ranking, if I was ranking all the movies, it would rank very high for me personally. I love Birdman. But in a year of Whiplash, Interstellar, Boyhood, even like The Grand Budapest Hotel, you could argue all of those movies are probably a bit more relevant than Birdman. I mean, it varies, right? Like Interstellar is a lot more relevant than Boyhood these days. But my point being is like, if Best Picture is all about getting it right, I don't know if they necessarily got it right this year, but they rarely ever get it right. And as happy as I am for Sean, I really am. I think it's awesome that he took home 4 in one night. I do think they should have been split up a little bit, especially when you compare the 2 frontrunners. I know Conclave kind of became a frontrunner, but if we're looking at, I feel like the overall season came down to Anora versus The Brutalist for a while. And the fact that the 2 potential frontrunners for Best Picture were a $6 million movie that was super energetic about a sex worker in New York, and the other one's this $10 million slower 3.5 hour micro epic, as some people are calling it. That's pretty cool. And again, super deserving, but I do think Brady Corbet should have got at least Best Director for his effort, because I don't know how to put it other than like, I'm a fan of Sean Baker. Some of his movies took a second watch for me to really appreciate, but I have full faith that Sean Baker will make a movie just as good, if not better, than Anora multiple times. Like, I don't think Anora is vastly better than anything else in his filmography. I don't know if Brady Corbet will ever make something as good as The Brutalist again. I think he will make some certified bangers for sure. I mean, Vox Lux is awesome. I know he had a terrible time making it, but it's a fantastic movie. Like, I do think Brady Corbet is very talented. Maybe he is the next Kubrick. He said he's shooting for the stars. Maybe The Brutalist ends up being his 7th best movie. Who knows? But that's the thing with the Oscars. You really never know who's going to get nominated again if people try and vote for legacy awards down the line. I think it's awesome that Sean Baker won editing, picture, screenplay. I would have given directing to Brady. It just feels like Anora is objectively a great movie, and The Brutalist is like, wow, we caught lightning in a bottle, and that doesn't happen a lot. And I do think like 5, maybe even 3 years from now, we'll look back and be like, man, Brutalist probably should have won. I mean, in a world where Dune Part 2 clearly should have won for a lot of things, like I don't think we get movies like Dune Part 2 ever. And close to that is movies like The Brutalist. We don't really get them all that often. So I don't know. Anora's a great movie, but I would still pick The Brutalist and Dune Part 2 over it. But it is awesome that Anora won Best Picture in the sense that it was made for $6 million. It's in the top 5 cheapest movies that ever won Best Picture. I mean, Moonlight is still the recent darling with that. It was made for just over 1.5 million, which is crazy. And between Anora and Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's pretty clear there's a huge change in terms of Oscar voters since they established they were adding members in 2016. And I think Anora, maybe even more so than Everything Everywhere All at Once, it just feels so Gen Z. It feels so fresh. I think this is much better than Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's a different discussion for a different time. But yeah, I'm just still in disbelief that Sean Baker won 4 Oscars. In terms of other winners, let's talk about Anora herself, Mikey Madison over Demi Moore. This was by far the most stacked category this year. Really close race. I get why people would want Demi Moore to win. Demi Moore is phenomenal in The Substance. I can't believe we live in a world where she actually got nominated for it. And honestly, I know Carla Sofia Gascon is a hot topic right now. Just the ride Emilia Perez has been on is one of the wildest of the past 25 years, maybe, for an Oscar movie. I do think Carla was phenomenal in Emilia Perez. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. The fact that she pulled off the character pre and post transition, I would have put her in the race. I probably still would have put her third behind Demi and Mikey. I would pick her over Fernanda personally. And even though I just lost all my viewer retention on this video, I will still say if the choice was up to me, I would probably vote Mikey just by that much. I'd have to sleep on the decision, but I do think they made the right call here. And I do feel really bad for Demi Moore. I mean, a lot of people talk about, oh, she'll get it next time. She might not. Like, I really do think this was her best chance at winning. It's not like roles like this pop up all the time. This was her first time ever being nominated anyways. But it's one of those things, it's like Mikey Madison could theoretically never get a nomination again too, you know? It's just one of those things of like, yeah, she's younger, but what if this was a one-hit wonder? I don't think so. Like, Mikey's clearly very talented, but I'm kind of over the whole legacy Oscar thing. I want the best performance to win, and just, if you were the best that year, you deserve it. In a way, this kind of feels like the Angela Bassett situation a bit, even though I think Mikey is the better performance. Like, Angela Bassett just came out and said she was not pissed. She was very disappointed that she didn't win the Oscar that year for Black Panther 2. And all these people are like, yeah, but Angela Bassett, she's so good. She'll win another one. Newsflash, she probably won't. And losing to somebody with hot dog hands is kind of a slap in the face. And it has nothing to do with how talented or not talented an actor is or isn't. Like, Angela Bassett, Demi Moore, Mikey Madison, they'll all hopefully get great roles again. It's just so hard to get to this point. The difference between the Jamie Lee Curtis win and the Mikey win is I think Mikey actually deserved it. And that's that. Do I feel bad for Demi Moore? Absolutely. That sucks. Do I think she was robbed of the Oscar? I personally don't. Some people feel that way. They're two great performances. Adrian Brody wins his second Oscar ever. Very deserving win, in my opinion. I could have gone without the speech, but like, the performance itself was fantastic. It was between him and Coleman Domingo for me. They're pretty neck and neck, but I'm really cool with Adrian Brody getting it. And people are hating on Adrian Brody for giving a speech that was way too long. I agree with both sides in the sense it's like, yeah, everyone else made their speeches short, but also we'll get to the problems with the Oscar show later, okay? I like when the best performance wins. Like, Timothee Chalamet playing Bob Dylan should have won this year. You put him up as Paul Atreides from Dune, then yeah, we might have a conversation here. I think that's probably the best performance of the year, but they pitched him for a complete unknown. Timothee Chalamet is going to win a lot of Oscars. I think he'll win at least 2 or 3 in his lifetime. He's got a long way to go. In fact, I know he's going to win at least 8 because he's chasing Tom Brady's record. But either way, it was a solid category. I'm glad Adrian won. And yeah, I like the best performance winning. And I think that applied to the first 2 categories that we talked about. I don't think it applies to best supporting actor for Kieran Culkin. I saw A Real Pain. I really like A Real Pain. It was a fun movie. Kieran Culkin is really, really good in it. And I don't really make content like kind of predicting the Oscars all the time. I don't talk about every single award show just because it's not like my forte. I know a lot of people have said since early on that Kieran Culkin would be a lock to win, and that a lot of people, it sounded like, thought he should win this entire time, which is fine. Everyone has their own opinion, but I can't for the life of me figure out why Guy Pearce was not the front runner this entire time. To me, this is one of the biggest snubs in a long time. I don't like being that person that says every year there's a huge snub, even though every year there kind of is, but it's hard for me to take seriously everyone saying that Kieran Culkin is definitively better than Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. To me, that's insane. Kieran Culkin fits the role for sure. He's doing his Kieran Culkin thing, but Guy Pearce becomes like a different human being. Every time I watch The Brutalist, I'm like, holy shit, this guy is just so good. I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with his Free Palestine button, but man, Guy Pearce gave the best performance in all 4 categories, honestly, for me. And the fact that he was snubbed this year for it is absolutely criminal. Then we have Zoe Saldana winning Best Supporting Actress for Emilia Perez, the movie everybody hates. In my opinion, very deserving win. One of those roles where, to me, when I came out of seeing it at the Toronto Film Festival, I saw it before a lot of people. I kind of felt like she was the lead of the movie, and a lot of people were like, no, she's not the people people that didn't see the movie, mind you, were like, nah, she's not the lead. Like, Carla Sofia Gascon is going to be the lead. And I'm watching the movie. I'm like, I think she's the lead. But she wins an Oscar. I thought she was fantastic in this movie. I think it's one of the more deserving wins of the night. People hate Amelia Perez. I like it more than most people. I'm not going to sit here and act like it should be nominated for, like, was it 13 Oscars or 11 Oscars? Something ridiculous. I'm not going to go that far, okay? It's not a Best Picture nominee for me, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It's a fucking batshit crazy movie. If it won Best Picture, a lot of people said it would have been one of the worst Best Picture winners of all time. Those people have not seen Crash or don't remember watching Crash and have not gone far back enough in film history to watch something like The Great Ziegfeld, okay? I get it. We could all hate on it. You know, in hindsight, the more that people that worked on the movie talk about their beliefs behind the movie, it gets harder and harder to support. I get it. I enjoyed it for what it was. We're moving on to a movie everybody liked called Flow. I thought Flow wasn't gonna win Best Animated. It seemed like there was a lot of hype this year for The Wild Robot. I thought Flow was better than The Wild Robot. Personally, my favorite animated film in that bunch was Memoir of a Snail. Great movie. You should watch it if you haven't seen it. But I'm still super happy for the filmmaker Gintz. I mean, I saw him in Toronto, and when he introduced the movie, he talked about how he related to the cat, and in his broken English, some people kind of laughed at him, and I felt really bad for the guy in the moment. And now everyone has seen the movie, and you know, the people that laughed at him, shame on you. But super cool to see a no dialogue international film win Best Animated Feature. I mean, yeah, like Boy and the Heron won last year, but Hayao Miyazaki's kind of regarded differently, I think, for voters. So to see something like this that's truly no budget win Best Animated Feature is really a good standout for me. And like I said, I like when a lot of movies get a lot of different awards. Like, just to go through some of the count, Anora got the most with 5, but The Brutalist still got 3, and 3 really cool ones. Like, it deserved score, it deserved cinematography for sure, and Adrian Brody was my favorite of those 5 performances. Dune Part 2 got 2 wins, Wicked got 2 wins, including production design, which a lot of people hated on, but it's like, that wizard robot thing is real. They built that in real life. That's crazy. So I was very cool with that one. Amelia Perez got 2, Conclave and The Substance each got a little bit of love. I'm Still Here won Best International Film, which is really cool. I mean, just overall, in terms of if we're rating the division of the wins themselves, there was not a win this year where I was like, Jamie Lee Curtis, what the fuck are we doing? Overall, I was pretty satisfied with how they were handed out. Now, in terms of Conan being the host, a lot of people, including myself, have wanted Conan to host the Oscars for years now. I just figured he would do a good job. Like, in terms of all the talk show hosts, he was the only one I would ever tune into every once in a while. And I think in a world where Ricky Gervais is an A+ and Jimmy Fallon is like a C+, I think Conan is like a B+, like really strong. Not every bit landed for me, but I do think he was really good. Like the Carla Sofia Gascon bit, hilarious. The child labor bit, hilarious. The Kendrick Lamar thing, the China subtitles moment, all that stuff was like legitimately very funny and had me laughing out loud. He was just like so close to having a perfect show, and then he does some bullshit like the "I'm gonna waste your time" song. Like, can we cut it out with all that stuff? I don't care that you're making fun of all these other hosts that did the song thing. Like, it's still annoying. The first award wasn't presented for like 33 minutes or something. It was also just nice to have a host that doesn't just rip on the movies just to rip on the movies. Like, there's been so many years where like you're trying to get people back into movies, and then the host will come out and absolutely roast 5 of the movies, or just simply be like, I didn't watch them, which makes sense why all these Academy voters laughed at it, because they didn't watch them either. And we'll get to that point soon. But just to have Conan actually be somebody that watches movies, respects movies, and makes jokes about them, but not in a way that's like, oh yeah, you shouldn't watch this one. That was really refreshing. And considering this guy, who, those of you that don't know, he lost both of his parents like 3 days apart in December. Then a few weeks later, his house burns down in LA. I mean, the dude has been going through a lot. And the fact that he was still this good with all that stuff going on, I really appreciate the effort that he pulled off. Like, sure, he might not have been like Ricky Gervais or Tina Fey with Amy Poehler level great, but I would say he was pretty damn close to like that second tier. He's like the head of that second tier. I would be super cool with him coming back. He was leagues better than a James Franco or a Gerard Carmichael. In terms of things I did and didn't like about the presentation of the show, I thought it was a great way to open the show with not only the LA montage, but also the Wicked stars performing Wizard of Oz songs, Wiz songs, and then Defying Gravity. I think that's the smartest way you could open a show, and it's actually entertaining. I choose that over performing the 5 songs nominated for Best Original Song any day of the week. Like, we do get good moments when they perform those songs, like I'm Just Ken, good moment. The Stars Born Shallow song with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, good moment. The Natu Natu performance from RRR, all cool stuff. But we do not need to sit through performances of all 5 songs every single year. It is torture. And I had faith when they started the show off that good. Like, there was real momentum building for a while. And then they do the pointless James Bond tribute. And maybe I was getting too high of hopes, because at first I was like, why are they doing a James Bond tribute? That doesn't make sense. But then I thought that James Bond had been in the news so much in the past 2 weeks, and I was like, wait a second. What if the Academy is going to, like, once a year, you know, take 1 or 2 big announcements and put them at the Oscars? That would be kind of cool. Like, everyone knows James Bond. Everyone would be interested in knowing who the next James Bond is. So I really, truly believe that at the end of that segment, they were going to come out and announce who the next James Bond was going to be. And that would have been awesome. Like, people are ripping on Adrian Brody for taking too long in his speech, and it's unfair that everyone else didn't get to speak as long. Like, the guys from Dune that got cut off, like, that's a fucked up. And I agree. All these people should get the chance to speak for as long as they want. Not like an hour each, but like 2 or 3 minutes each, I think is fair. But people will bitch about Adrian Brody taking up too much time and not Doja Cat performing James Bond songs. It's crazy. Like, they nailed it with the Wicked intro, you know, bringing the mainstream audience. Like, Wicked was such a huge hit. People love the music. Start the show with that, bring them in. That's great. It's a relevant movie to the year, and movies like this only get honored one night a year on this level of scale. And I hope next year they just don't bring out Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan singing Disney songs, because every year all they do is like, oh, the Oscars, we gotta go faster this year, and then they just put bullshit in the entire show. Especially after Conan had a pretty good monologue about, hey, you know, like all the stars, you know, it might seem self-indulgent, right, that we're honoring all these famous people, but a lot of the people that get Oscars are also unknown people that have been working their ass off behind the scenes for years, and they're finally getting some recognition. And then we cut their mic off for James Bond songs. It's stupid. And while I'm on the topic of being pissed off a little bit, I want to talk about something, because since 2016, the Academy has added a lot of new members, and I think we have needed fresher faces in there for a while. And I think you see some of the payoff with that already. Like, a lot of the choices for Best Picture and all these different types of technical awards, like the fact that The Substance was a Best Picture nominee this year is crazy and awesome at the same time. So I do think there has been some progress in that regard. But just like how we keep bringing some people in, I really do think we have to start kicking some people out, because Variety put out an article recently interviewing some anonymous voters for the Academy this year. And 3 of the biggest takeaways from this article include that people didn't watch Dune Part 2 because they thought Part 1 was boring. The Brutalist was too long, so people decided to either not watch it or didn't finish it. And 2 people said that Ralph Fiennes shouldn't win Best Actor because they thought he won for Schindler's List, even though he didn't. And apparently when one of these people was being interviewed and he gave that reason, the interviewer was like, but you voted for Adrian Brody, who already actually won an Oscar. So let's break this thing down, starting with the Dune Part 2 thing. You know who I've heard say Dune Part 1 was boring, I don't want to watch Dune 2? I've heard that take from like 5 of my friends who are pretty casual movie fans. I've convinced 2 of them to actually give Part 2 a shot, and they were like, holy shit, bro, that movie's awesome. And it's okay to have both of those kinds of opinions. Like, do I want my other 3 friends to watch Dune Part 2? Absolutely. But they don't have to. They're regular people. They're not people that vote for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And here would be my personal rule if I was president of the Academy. If you can't find the time to watch the 10 most important movies of the year voted on by your peers, and not only that, you can't find the time to watch the most monumental of that group of 10. Not only should you not be allowed to vote at the Oscars, you probably shouldn't be working in the industry. It's just fucking pathetic. And I get the argument that some people might say, well, these people are pretty busy, you know, they're out actually making movies. I have no idea if Christopher Nolan watched all 10 Best Picture nominees this year because he's so busy making The Odyssey overseas, and that's fine. Just don't let Christopher Nolan vote if that's the case. If you think The Brutalist is too long to watch and you're voting for Best Picture, you shouldn't be allowed to pick Wicked. And Timothee Chalamet has gotten a lot of shit over the past 2 weeks of how he compared himself to Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps. He wants to be known as one of the greats and he takes his craft very seriously. And a lot of people have given him a lot of hate. I thought it was pretty cool. You know why? Because he proved that he actually gives a shit. And it's tough because in every single industry, there are always two groups of people. There are people in your industry or on your team that care, and there are people that just don't. That's just how life goes. And I have made a lot of tweets recently comparing sports and film. It's not the best comparison. I understand this is a subjective art field, but the difference is if you're on a team of players that don't care in sports, forget the Super Bowl. You're probably not making the playoffs. In Hollywood, though, you could be like, I didn't have time to watch movies this year. I saw Wicked. I liked Wicked. I saw Anora. I laughed a lot at Anora. Amelia Perez, it was but I'm friends with Selena Gomez, so I guess I'll vote for that one. The Oscars is just in such a weird situation where it does recognize the best movies of the year, but it's all about who has the best awards campaign. It's about who you could meet at dinner and can you get their vote if you had a good, fun conversation with them. And a lot of people will just vote for who they're friends with, and then hopefully that friend votes for you later on when you're nominated. Because the Ray Fiennes thing of Ray Fiennes already won, so I'm gonna vote for Adrian Brody. Let's not like overestimate that this person's a jackass and didn't do any research whatsoever. Forget that part of it. Let's pretend that this person did intentionally try to vote for somebody that they thought didn't win an Oscar before. Like, compare that to Tom Brady. Imagine you're Tom Brady and you win your first Super Bowl. And then the other 31 NFL teams come to you, Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, everyone involved in the Patriots, and be like, hey, congrats, that was awesome. The thing is, you can't win another Super Bowl until all 31 other teams win too. It's insane. And the main issue with the Oscars still is that it's a popularity contest dressed up as a championship. And the answer is like so nuanced. There's no way you could really make a one-to-one comparison with sports and movies. I understand that, right? Because I don't think the answer is keeping track of stats, right? Like, what was the longest shot in your movie? How many screaming monologues did an actor have? You know, like there's no mathematical way to really break this down. But I do think the first step in regulating that as best as we can is kicking out people that haven't watched half of the movies nominated. And maybe what I'm about to say is a hot take, but if sitting through 10 movies is a chore for you, you probably shouldn't have a say in what the best movie of the year is. And that's my take on the 2025 Academy Awards. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you like me, I guess, and you like me talking about movies. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of videos coming out. Top 25 best movies of 2024, Sundance 2025 review, individual reviews from Mickey 17, The Monkey, which I am seeing tomorrow. Captain America 4, I think is still interesting enough to talk about, and maybe that'll be its own video. Maybe that'll tie into the Marvel vs. DC video I want to make. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Either way, it's an interesting time for movies, and this is an interesting time to make a YouTube channel talking about movies. So thank you so much if you subscribe. Thank you for watching up to this point. Comment down below what your favorite win of the night was, what your biggest snub of the night was. I love talking to you guys about all things movies in general. And yeah, this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching. As always, follow me on Letterboxd, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.